My wife, who I thought was secretly stole $250, $0 from our joint account, then convinced our lawyer to sign over ownership of our family home in a shady probate scam. Now she's disappeared with everything, and I don't know who to trust or how to fight back. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this down, but after everything that's happened, I need to get it out somewhere. My wife seemed perfect at first, smart, beautiful, ambitious. We married young, built a life together, and I thought we had something solid. But I've learned the hard way that appearances can be deceiving. It all started about 6 months ago. Things felt a little off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Had always been a bit bitchy when she was stressed, but lately she'd snap at me over the smallest things. She'd cancel plans without warning, say she was busy, or just disappear for hours. I brushed it off as work stress, or maybe her being overwhelmed. After all, she was climbing the corporate ladder, and I thought maybe she was just under a lot of pressure. But then I noticed her phone was more guarded than ever. She'd hide it when I entered the room, delete texts, and her social media activity suddenly went dark. What really got my attention was the bank statements. I'd always been the one handling our finances, but I started to notice some strange transactions. Small charges here and there, nothing out of the ordinary, until I saw a transfer of $250, $0 disappear from our joint account. That's $250,000. I remember sitting there staring at the screen thinking it had to be a mistake. But no, it was real. Someone had stolen it. I immediately called the bank, but they told me the withdrawal was authorized by signature. That was the first huge red flag. I went through our emails, and that's when I found it. An email from a lawyer, John Parker, who was handling the probate for our house. Had convinced him to sign over ownership of our family home, our biggest asset, under some shady probate scam that I'd never heard of. She lied to me, told me she was doing some legal paperwork for our future, but it was all a lie. I confronted her that night. I was furious. I threw the papers on the table and I asked her what the hell was going on. Her reaction: she looked at me with those cold, bitchy eyes and said, "You're overreacting. It's none of your business. I'm doing what's best for us." She lied right to my face. She told me the money was for some investment she was making, that she was taking care of things, but I knew better. I knew she was lying. When I pressed her further, she snapped. Said I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, that I was crazy for even questioning her motives. She dismissed my concerns, told me I was overthinking, and then she left the house, saying she needed space and that I was being controlling. That was the last straw. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? The emotional impact was brutal. I felt shock, then anger, then deep sadness. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But now I was starting to see her for what she really was: a manipulative, deceitful woman who'd been lying to me. For months, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I looked at the house, I was reminded of everything we'd lost. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. I trusted her blindly, and she turned out to be nothing but a thief and a liar. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her walk away with everything: money, our home, my life. I started digging into her phone, her emails, anything I could find. The more I looked, the more I uncovered. She'd been sneaking around, meeting with some guy named Mark, some younger guy from her work, doing God knows what. They'd been sleeping together, I was sure of it. She'd been cheating on me with him for months, probably longer. It all made sense now: the late nights, the secret calls, the way she'd act so guilty when I was around. And then I found out about the scam. She convinced our lawyer to sign over the house, probably under some shady deal she cooked up with Mark to split the proceeds. I felt sick. All my hard work, our home, our future, gone in a matter of months. I was angry, betrayed, and feeling completely powerless. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight back, even if that meant going against her, exposing her lies, and maybe destroying whatever was left of our marriage. That's where I am now, trying to piece everything together, figure out my next move, and somehow come out of this mess with some shred of dignity. I don't know if I'll ever trust again, but I do know one thing: I won't let her take everything without a fight. After I found out about the scam and her affair with Mark, everything changed. I was furious, but also numb. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to me for so long, about the money, about the house, about everything. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down overnight. The house, which we'd spent years fixing up and making a home, was now just a pawn in her shady game. And the money 250 gone, just like that. It was like losing a part of myself, something I'd worked so hard for, to her greed and lies. I spent the next few days trying to process what I'd discovered. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Mark, saw the house being transferred, saw the money disappearing from our account. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How did I not see the little things? Her secretive phone calls, the late nights, the way she'd suddenly become distant. I thought she was just stressed, busy with work. Turns out she was planning her escape, her betrayal. I decided I needed to confront her again, face to face. I wanted her to see what her lies had done to me. So I called her, told her I knew everything. She answered with that same bitchy tone, acting like she was the victim. "You're overreacting, James. You don't understand the bigger picture," she said. I told her I knew about Mark, about the house, about the money. That's when she finally snapped. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of snooping, saying I was crazy for trusting her. Her voice was cold, dismissive, like she couldn't care less about the damage she'd caused. Her reaction made me realize how deep her deception ran. She was truly a master at lying, at pretending everything was fine while scheming behind. My back, I felt a mixture of rage and despair. How could she do this? How could she lie to me for so long? I'd always thought we were partners, building a life together. Turns out she'd been planning her escape from the start. I knew I had to do something more than just confront her. I started digging into her phone, her emails, anything I could find. I wanted to understand how she'd pulled off this scam and whether there was anything else she was hiding. It was a brutal process, reading her messages, seeing her flirt with Mark, catching her lies. I discovered she'd been telling her friends she was taking a break, but in reality she was planning her new life with him. She'd even been asking her friends for advice on how to hide her tracks, how to make it look like she'd just left town because of work stress. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and so hurt that I almost didn't recognize myself. I'd trusted her with everything, my heart, my money, our future, and she'd used that trust against me. I kept asking myself why I hadn't seen it sooner, why I'd been so blind to her true nature. I had to face the fact that was not the woman I thought she was. She was a liar, a thief, and a cheater. In the midst of this chaos, I started considering my options. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with everything. I needed to fight back, legally, financially, and emotionally. I contacted a lawyer, explained everything I'd uncovered, and began to prepare for a fight. The lawyer wasn't optimistic at first. This scam was complicated and her lies had been well hidden. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, email exchanges, and I was determined to use everything I had to get justice. I also reached out to a private investigator I'd found online. I needed evidence of her relationship with Mark, proof that she'd been cheating on me. I wanted to show her that I wasn't going to let her get away with this without consequences. The pie started tailing her, gathering footage and photos. It was shocking how quickly her life unraveled once the truth started to surface. She was careless, meeting Mark late at night, acting guilty when she thought no one was watching. Throughout all this, I couldn't help feeling a strange mix of anger and sadness. I was angry because she betrayed me so thoroughly. Sad because I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. I kept replaying moments from our past, our wedding, the vacations, the quiet nights at home, and it all felt like a lie now. How could someone I trusted so completely turn out to be so deceitful? The pain was deep, and I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I'd just be forever haunted by her betrayal. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her ruin me completely. I had to fight for what was right, my money, my home, my dignity. I wasn't going to just accept her leaving with everything she'd stolen. I filed the necessary legal paperwork, started the process of reclaiming the house, and prepared for a fight in court. It was going to be a long, exhausting battle, but I was determined to see it through. I owed that to myself, and honestly I owed it to the life I thought I'd built with her. In the end, I realized something important. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But you can rebuild your life piece by piece. I don't know what the future holds now, whether I'll ever fully recover or find happiness again. But I do know one thing: I won't let her get away with destroying everything I worked for. I'm not done fighting. Not yet. The more I dug into her lies, the more I realized how deep her deceit went. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about her entire persona, the way she manipulated everyone around her. She'd always been bitchy, yes, but I never thought she'd be capable of orchestrating a scam on this scale. When I found out she'd convinced our lawyer to sign over the house, I felt like I'd been punched again. That house was supposed to be our sanctuary, a symbol of our commitment. Now, it was being handed over under some shady probate scheme she cooked up with Mark. I remember sitting in my office, staring at the legal documents she'd forged or manipulated, trying to piece together how she pulled it off. The lawyer, John Parker, was a known, reputable guy until she got to him. She played the innocent, helpless wife role, and he bought it. He signed over the house without realizing the full picture. I found emails where she was sweet-talking him, convincing him she was doing what's best for the family. And I knew she'd lied to him, too. That was the worst part. She'd spun so many lies, I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. I also discovered that she'd been secretly funneling money into an offshore account. I found the account number, the wire transfers. She'd been moving money out of our joint account slowly over months, probably to cover her tracks. I felt sick reading it. That's when it hit me: she'd been planning this for a long time. The $250, $0 theft wasn't some impulsive act. It was carefully calculated. She'd been draining our savings, hiding her tracks, all while pretending everything was fine. She was a master at deception. The hardest part was realizing how much I'd loved her, how I'd trusted her. I was furious at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. She'd been bitchy, yes, but I thought it was just stress. I thought she was just overwhelmed. Turns out she was lying right to my face, hiding her affair and her schemes. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I kept asking, how could she do this? How could I have been so blind? It wasn't just the money or the house. What hurt the most was the loss of our future. I'd always pictured us growing old together, building a life, maybe having kids someday. And now all of that was slipping away, replaced by anger and confusion. I felt betrayed, not just but by everything I believed in. I started questioning my own judgment, wondering how I missed all the signs. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to act fast. I reached out to a different lawyer, someone who specialized in financial crimes and scams. I wanted to understand my legal options. The lawyer told me I could potentially sue her for fraud and recover some of the stolen money, but it wouldn't be easy. The scam was complex, and if she'd already transferred the house, I might be fighting a losing battle. Still, I had to try. I couldn't just let her walk away with everything. Meanwhile, I hired that pie I mentioned. He started tailing her, gathering evidence of her relationship with Mark. I needed proof, something concrete I could use in court or to confront her directly. I watched her meet Mark late at night, saw her sneaking out of the house with her bag, saw her flirt and kiss him in the shadows. It was a brutal sight. I felt like I was watching my marriage die in front of me, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. All I could do was gather evidence and prepare for what was coming. Honestly, the emotional toll was crushing. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt. I kept replaying all the moments we'd shared, her smile, her touch, her promises, and wondering how she could turn into this lying, cheating thief. It was like losing the person I thought I knew, replaced by a stranger who'd betrayed me on every level. I cried more times than I'd like to admit. I felt betrayed not just by her, but by myself for trusting her so blindly. I knew I had to get my head straight. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I started planning my next steps: legal action, gathering evidence, talking to friends and family who knew about her true nature. I also started saving every piece of documentation I could find: bank statements, emails, texts. I wanted to build a case. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. In the quiet moments, I'd think about what I'd learned from all this, about trust, betrayal, and the importance of paying attention to the warning signs. I'd always believed in loyalty, honesty, and partnership, but now I see how fragile those things are. Greed and lies shattered everything I thought was real. But even in the wreckage, I found a spark of resolve. I wasn't going to let her destroy me completely. I owed it to myself to fight for what was left, my dignity, my money, my future. And I promised myself that no matter how dark it got, I wouldn't give up. The legal battle started slow but soon turned into a full-blown nightmare. I was pouring every dollar I had into lawyers, investigators, and trying to stay afloat emotionally. The first court hearing was a mess. Showed up with her bitchy smirk, pretending to be the victim, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation and interfere with her personal life. She spun a tale about how she was just trying to do what's best for the family, even though I knew better. She lied constantly, twisting the truth to make herself look innocent. Meanwhile, I had mountains of evidence, bank transfers, emails, the Pie's reports, that painted her as the scheming thief she truly was. During the hearing, I felt like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. Her lawyer was slick, convincing the judge that was just a confused woman trying to rebuild her life. Even though I knew she was the mastermind behind the scam, I sat there, seething inside, knowing I had the proof, if only I could get the court to see it. But courts are tricky. They tend to favor the one who plays the victim well and was a master at that. She cried crocodile tears, claiming she was misunderstood and that I was trying to control her. The judge ordered a temporary freeze on the house transfer, which was a relief, but it didn't change much. Had already moved out, leaving me with the wreckage of our marriage and the stolen money. I was left to deal with the aftermath, trying to figure out what my next move should be. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but I knew I couldn't give up. I had to keep fighting for my rights, for the house, and for the money she'd stolen. I also learned that had been making secret calls to Mark while she was supposedly away from the house. The Pie brought back footage of her sneaking into his apartment late at night, kissing him goodbye and leaving in the early hours. Seeing her with Mark like that, so shameless, made my stomach turn. I trusted her, loved her, and she'd been lying to my face all along. It was a hard pill to swallow, knowing she'd been cheating on me and using me all at once. It was like discovering I'd been living with a stranger, one who was completely selfish and manipulative. As I pieced everything together, I started feeling more determined. I had to get her out of my life completely. I couldn't let her keep manipulating me or stealing from me. I began preparing for a final showdown, filing a lawsuit for fraud, demanding the return of the money and seeking full custody of the house if it came to that. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I was sick of playing nice. I wanted justice, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. In the process, I also started reaching out to friends and family, people who knew's true nature. I told them everything I'd uncovered, asked for their advice and their support. Some of them were shocked, others weren't surprised at all. A few told me I deserved better, that I should cut my losses and walk away. But I couldn't, not yet. I had invested so much in that marriage, time, money, hope, and I wasn't going to let her destroy it all without a fight. Every day brought new surprises, more lies, more cover-ups, more evidence of her betrayal. The worst part was knowing that she'd been living a double life for months, maybe longer. She'd been pretending to be the perfect wife, the loving partner, while secretly betraying me with Mark and robbing us blind. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. The pain of betrayal was overwhelming, but I refused to let it define me. I had to stay strong for myself and for what was right. Now I was at a crossroads. I could keep fighting or accept that she might slip away forever, taking what's left of our life with her. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her walk away with everything: money, house, my dignity. I'd come too far. I was already planning my next step, more legal action, gathering more evidence, preparing for the court hearings. I wasn't going to give up, not now. I owed it to myself to see this through, no matter how ugly it got. I also started reflecting on all I'd learned from this nightmare. Trust isn't something you give blindly anymore. It's something you have to earn and protect. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, but now I see how fragile those things are. I'd been thinking love could conquer everything. Turns out it takes more than love to survive betrayal like this. It takes strength, resilience, and a willingness to fight for what's right. And I'm learning that the hard way. The legal process dragged on, and every day felt like a new battle. I was pouring my savings into lawyers, investigators, and court fees, but I refused to back down. Of course, played the victim at every turn, claiming she was just trying to protect her family and that I was harassing her. Her tone was bitchy and condescending, like she thought I was some kind of idiot. She'd send nasty texts, accusing me of ruining her life, and insisting she was doing what's best for the kids even though we didn't have any. It was clear she was trying to manipulate the situation, to make herself look innocent while she continued her lies. In court, she spun a convincing story about how she'd only taken the money to help us, how she was just trying to fix things, and how I was trying to control her. She cried crocodile tears, acting like the victim, and her lawyer played along, painting her as some misunderstood wife caught in a difficult situation. Meanwhile, I had the evidence, screenshots of bank transfers, emails with the lawyer, photos of her sneaking out to meet Mark. I knew I had the facts, but courts aren't always logical. They're about who presents the best story and was a master manipulator. The judge issued a temporary restraining order, preventing her from selling or transferring the house, but that was just a band-aid. The real fight was ahead. I knew she'd do everything to get away with her scam, and I was prepared to fight to the bitter end. I reached out to a forensic accountant to trace the offshore accounts she'd transferred money into. The PI kept gathering footage of her and Mark, which I planned to use as leverage. Every day I felt like I was fighting a losing battle, but I refused to let her steal everything I'd worked for. One night I found myself staring at our wedding photo, her smiling, so full of life. Now it felt like a distant memory. I wondered how she could be so different behind closed doors, so manipulative, so cold. I felt anger rising, but also sadness. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I was left with nothing but the wreckage. I started to realize that my trust had been misplaced, that I'd been blind to her true nature for so long. It was a hard lesson, but one I had to learn. Meanwhile, attitude only got bitchier. She'd call me names, accuse me of trying to ruin her life, and say I was jealous of Mark. She'd mock my efforts, calling me pathetic for fighting back. But I knew her game. She was trying to wear me down, to make me give up, to make me look like the villain. I refused to let her win that way. I kept pushing forward, gathering more evidence, talking to my lawyers about the next steps. I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. And then came the final blow. The forensic accountant uncovered that she had transferred almost all of the stolen money into various offshore accounts. The house was already in her name, but I had enough evidence to challenge it, if I could get the court to see through her lies. I realized I had to act fast. I filed a new motion to revoke the house transfer, citing fraud and illegal activity. The court scheduled another hearing, and I prepared my case, knowing it could be my last chance to stop her. Throughout all this, I kept asking myself how I'd let it get this far, how I'd trusted her so blindly, how I'd believed she was mine. Every betrayal, every lie felt like a punch in the gut. But I also learned that I was stronger than I thought. I was resilient, and I wasn't going to let her destroy me without a fight. I was determined to reclaim what was mine, to hold her accountable, and to rebuild my life from the ashes. The hardest part was watching her try to manipulate everyone around her, friends, lawyers, the judge. She'd lie with a bitchy smile, acting innocent, pretending she was the victim, but I knew her game now. I had the evidence, and I was ready to use it. This fight was far from over, and I was prepared to see it through to the end, no matter how ugly it got. I just kept thinking about the future, what I'd do once this was all behind me, and how I'd never let someone like her hurt me again. The final court hearing was intense. I knew was going to pull out all the stops to try and save herself, but I had everything lined up. The evidence was irrefutable. Her lies, the offshore accounts, the forged documents, the secret meetings with Mark. She looked bitchy and defiant, sitting there with that smug smile, acting like she was the victim. but I saw right through her. The lawyer I hired laid out everything clearly: how she manipulated the lawyer to sign over the house, how she drained our joint account, how she'd been cheating on me with Mark for months. When the judge finally reviewed the case, it was obvious she saw through her lies. The judge ordered the house to be returned to me, citing clear evidence of fraud and illegal activity. His face was a mixture of rage and disbelief. She tried to argue, to cry, to act like the innocent victim again, but it was too late. The court had made its decision. The offshore accounts were frozen, and the money she'd stolen was now in the court's control, pending recovery efforts. That was a small victory, but it felt immense. After the ruling disappeared, just like that. No goodbyes, no explanations. She vanished into the night, leaving her phone behind, her bags packed hastily. I guess she realized she was about to lose everything: her money, her freedom, her reputation. I was left standing there, exhausted and numb, watching her walk away from the wreckage she created. The house was mine again, but I knew the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. In the aftermath, I started rebuilding my life. I cut ties with her completely. I blocked her number, deleted her from my social media, and refused to let her manipulate me anymore. I focused on my own recovery, seeing a therapist, reconnecting with friends, and working on my own healing. I realized I'd been naive, trusting her blindly, but now I was more cautious. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you how to be stronger. Looking back, I think the most important lesson I learned is that you can't ignore the signs. The bitchy attitude, the secretive behavior, the lies about money, those were all red flags I chose to overlook. I was blinded by love, but love isn't enough when someone is fundamentally dishonest and manipulative. I also learned that justice isn't always quick or easy, but persistence pays off. The legal battle drained me, but it was worth it to see her finally held accountable. Now, I'm focusing on moving forward. I still get angry when I think about what she did, but I refuse to let that anger control me. I've started saving, investing, and planning for a future where I don't have to worry about betrayal or deception. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm stronger than I was 6 months ago. I've learned that betrayal can shatter your world, but it also reveals your resilience. To anyone out there feeling betrayed or overwhelmed, know that it's okay to feel broken for a while. But don't give up. Fight for yourself, for your dignity, for your future. Trust is fragile, and sometimes you need to rebuild it from scratch, piece by piece. Trust your instincts, stay vigilant, and never settle for less than honesty and loyalty. Because in the end, the truth will come out and justice will find its way.